What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk to you about Palantir. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what potentially moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Palantir did go up a astonishing 7.73%, 122 with the low, 131.94 the high. You had a lot of volume though as well, 184 million shares being traded, 97 is the average. And if we do look at both the secondary market and also dark pool, majority of the actual volume did come from actual institutions buying Palantir. It wasn't algorithmic trading. And given the fear that did happen today, so a couple of things really did affect the broader market. One was you just saw a overall kind of increase in tensions between the States and China. So that's not good. Most likely there's going to be a lot of kind of talking between the two over this weekend, and potentially if things don't go according to plan, you could see the States slapping China with some sanctions. Obviously not advantageous for the broader market. And then we did also have some good data that did come out, and the market's somewhat inverse. So the market's going to take this negative data and assume it means less rate cuts. And you can kind of see as well, it did actually push the optimism from July to September. And even for September, it's a 55.3% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut. So at the end of the day, this isn't good for growth stocks. So Palantir, despite all of the fear that was starting to surge in the market, it moved higher. And honestly, the only assumption is, because the only thing that has really come out was a lot of articles about Fannie Mae and how they're going to be helping to fight against mortgage fraud. But essentially, I think Wall Street is finally seeing Palantir for not only as a solid buy, but as a defensive stock. Because in times of fear, and I've brought this up in the past, it hasn't been this bold, such as what happened today, but I've even brought up that when it was at the $79 range, it was a win-win scenario, that even potentially if things were going to go down, Palantir seems to be and was faring a little bit better than the broader market. So I feel like today, big money really got behind Palantir because of all the recent news, of course, that's been helping Palantir, but Palantir is a solid stock. Shorts are scared to really do anything with it as well. So you pretty much have a kind of steel tight company that nobody is really willing to bet against. Today, despite everything, the blood in the market, shorts increased 3,000 shares. That is absolutely nothing. 2.54% of the free float is being shorted, works out to be 55.26 million shares overall are being shorted, and that does equate to $6.76 billion. So there's more shorts just in the 2% that's in Palantir than many companies have as a market cap. So definitely very interesting. But as I've said in the past, I think just shorts have PTSD. So if you pretty much have a stock that institutions love to rally behind, shorts don't want to increase, you pretty much have a perfect storm. And I don't believe this has ever happened in the history of Wall Street that is happening with Palantir right now. So not only is it a huge growth stock, but I think big money is right now at least categorizing it as a defensive stock, defensive play. So let me know your viewpoint on that. Do you kind of agree? What's your general thoughts? Because there is no real other explanation based on this. And as well, at the same time, based on a lot of the transactions that did occur, like I said, on both the secondary market and also dark pool, big money is buying it in mass quantities. So there has to be something, either they're aware of some big news coming that maybe hasn't hit mainstream media yet, but definitely this has happened as well in the 70s and 80s. Was very obvious that big money was using it as somewhat as a hedge. So I think especially with the debt levels, maybe big money is really rotating away from bonds. I believe even JP Morgan's CEO did state that there is going to be cracks in the bond market. So maybe big money is using Palantir as kind of an alternative to bonds as more of a defensive kind of component. So it's definitely, like I said, this has never happened ever in the history of Palantir. And based on just the technicals, as I've mentioned in my video last time, because I only do typically one Palantir video a week, but the writing was on the wall that there was going to be a new 52-week high coming. And honestly, given the momentum that's behind Palantir, it could easily come early next week. But based on the options, you had 488 million in calls, 181 million in puts. 51% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. So despite everything, you are seeing Wall Street still very optimistic. And even, for instance, the last 5 minutes, so 2:55 to 3 p.m., there was 30.8 million in premiums. And if we kind of look at this, orient it based on premiums, it does look like it was a multi-leg kind of transaction. But the primary one is, it looks like expiring in 7 days, so June the 6th, $120 call was purchased, and they paid a premium of $12.38. So essentially making their break even that was 132 or 132.50 roughly. So they are anticipating by next week essentially a new all-time high. And that there's many other stocks that is really projecting all-time highs. And at the same time, given the huge momentum with Palantir, this is all the open interest options. And so that does work out to be roughly about 70,000 in the money options. So when it comes down to going into next week, you should see a very nice bump up in the stock price, as market makers typically don't have a lot of volatile stocks such as Palantir in their inventory. So that means market makers will have to go either after hours today or during the pre-market on Monday. But definitely there will be a fair amount of buying. So definitely big things might be coming down the pipeline going into next week. So you'll have a nice kickoff starting with that. But with it closing at 131, it is trading between currently this R2 and this R1. So 133.66 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. And essentially if it hits that, that would be a all-time high, because right now 133.49 is that all-time high. Flip side, 121 is going to be the next strong support. So going into this upcoming week with that good amount of buying just merely from those options, that could be enough to really get it above this R2. And if it is able to hold that, then essentially you see the next strong target is that 153. So big things might be coming down the pipeline. One thing I do want to bring up though is basically this. I see a lot of articles kind of bringing up about ownership, and I believe I've even had comments saying, can I bring up Palantir and cover their ownership? So ultimately, quarter over quarter, I know we're kind of midway through near the end of Q2, but going from Q4 to Q1, there is now 1.26 billion shares being held by institutions. That is a increase quarter over quarter of 27.53%. There was one new analyst rating that did come out today. It was more of a reiteration, so nothing really crazy new worth buying over, but you did have Louis with William Blair maintain their hold position. Louis has a 60% success rating, and honestly I think Louis reiterates his rating almost every 2 weeks or something like that. I don't know why he does that, but aside from that though, last couple ratings were absolutely on point. So you do have Daniel Ives, Wedbush 140 buy, then Mariana $150. So you have pretty much the two extreme bulls going back to back. So we'll kind of wait and see how everything does play out, but on the actual chart there's not really any negatives to bring up. It is above all of the key pivotal moving averages, even given a lot of the recent volatility. You do have stochastic RSI surprisingly oversold. So Palantir, things like I said could go very right, and I'd be really stupid for anyone to really bet against Palantir. So I think Palantir definitely is poised for higher highs going into this upcoming week. So let me know your thoughts on Palantir. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What's your general thoughts on all that? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.